Hey guys, welcome back to Build with Buddies episode number 3. This is Adil and Prathamesh, your boring, exciting, interesting Host. Hosts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Prathamesh, what are we going to talk about today?
Hmm. Let's talk about something that I have had in mind for the last few weeks, which is pattern recognition.
Hmm.
I was talking with a friend who is in marketing, and he was trying to, when you are a marketer, when you are in a company who is responsible for marketing, and especially when it is not an agency, you get all types of random jobs. And for him, the jobs were like he had to set up an account on Play Store, upload the app, figure out how to improve the experience on the app, then create organic post it on Instagram. Uh, and he felt that all of them are drastically different jobs, and he's trying to do multiple jobs at the same time. And for me, it did not look like that, because the way he was looking at things was from the lens of a label. you know what do I mean by that? He thought he is doing a job of a UI UX designer when he is optimizing the experience of the app, or he's doing the job of, let's say, an SEO specialist when he's optimizing the app store listing, and a social media marketer when he's creating posts for social media. A bunch of these different. So he has learned about marketing from the school, right? From, let's say, the colleges and stuff that indoctrinate you with all these different theories and labels, and then you forget to really learn the fundamentals. And I try to ask him, okay, tell me all the kinds of jobs you're doing, because if you're a marketer, of course they are not asking you to code, right? They are not asking you to do the accounts or hire people. There are so many other functions that they are not asking you to do. There is some kind of connection across the tasks that is given to you. And so I told him, the reason you think that you're doing way too many different kinds of jobs is because you are too stuck on the outcome or the deliverable of what you're doing, and not on the kind of actions you are performing. And so I asked him, can you just, across all these jobs, tell me the actions that you're doing? And just 4 5 actions came out, right? It was either setting up an account, creating content, publishing content, promoting content, and optimizing content. And when I said that, all of a sudden his kind of brain opened up, and he started seeing connections across everything that he was trying to do. And I thought that was an obvious way of thinking, and I'm sure that that might be a way of thinking that a lot of people who are entrepreneurs have, but who are too too much conditioned with the labels that are taught, right, to us. And they don't see beyond the labels. Let's say another example is, one of my teammates, he was too stuck on becoming a performance marketer. And I told him, you don't really need to be so stuck on this label of being a performance marketer. You just need to look at yourself as a marketer and understand that you have just a few simple kinds or types of activities you need to do as a marketer. You need to come up with ideas, create content, and then promote it, and then analyze the data, and then optimize what you have created in the next cycle. It took almost a year for him to understand that
But
he lost a year
do you
in
think
just trying to think
this
about
this
it.
problem, yeah, do you think the problem that you're mentioning is basically just a simple as like perspective shift, like a
Yeah,
difference
of
in the
course.
perspective? For
It
example,
is.
I believe myself to be, we were talking about it in the last episodes also, as a multidisciplinary. And by multidisciplinary, I don't necessarily mean that, I keep moving between completely different disciplines, like say literature or business or whatever it is. In general, like even within marketing, even within a certain section of the discipline. So I think isn't that just a perspective, or is it seriously like people are like limiting themselves like in other ways rather than what's in their head?
What I feel, it is, I don't know if perspective is the key here or not, but it is more about where you're focusing, right? Uh,
Mm.
are you a big picture guy, or are you a detailing guy, right? Or the small picture guy. Both are important, like especially when you're executing, you need to be super focused on a single point. But when you are kind of understanding where you are in that bigger picture, you need like a broader, you can say perspective, I guess that's the right one. But even when you have the broader perspective, how do you train yourself to look for patterns? Because pattern recognition has been one of the most important skills since uh, the beginning of human civilization. The reason is because everything that you do to build is built on top of patterns. I'll give you an example. The reason Henry Ford was able to master mass production was because he understood patterns, which is um having the same kind of model, having the same kind of designs, them again and again so that you can bring in efficiencies in your production. I'll give you, I'll tell you the name of the thinker who mastered this philosophy of pattern thinking. His name is Christopher Alexander. Okay, he's an
Mm-hmm.
architect. He wrote a book in the 1970s called as a pattern language, in which he said that architecture across the world and across the time, since thousands of years, have evolved, uh, and they look different on the surface. But if you really look deeper, you will start finding patterns no matter where you go. And those patterns are common across, uh, civilizations and across the time. For example, a staircase is a pattern that is used in Machu Picchu. Uh, it has been used in pyramids. It's used in modern architecture today as well in the building that you live, let's say, right? So it's a very common pattern that is being carried forward through generations. A window, a door, a place to sit in window, right? A place to sit in window is also that's actually a pattern that he named. Alexander, he created a library of about 190 or 200 patterns or something, I don't remember the number, but he created this library of patterns to tell people about what are the building blocks of a good architecture that has life in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that has a sense of uh, aliveness to it. He called it the quality without a name. That is what he termed that quality.
The
Okay,
quality without a name.
yeah, that is what he called it, because he never found a good name for that thing. But the way I looked at it, or I interpreted that quality without a name, is there is certain architecture that you will find is extremely dry. It does not have life in it, right? uh, it feels dead. And then there is certain architecture that feels full of life. There is so much you can do there, and there's so much, it feels so welcoming and it feels so comfortable and nice, right? uh,
Mm.
that is what my interpretation was about that term that he coined, which is the quality without a name. And I started thinking, okay, how can we apply this to marketing, advertising, right? And that is when I kind of stumbled upon this idea of building a library of visual patterns that people use in advertising, which is where I created this project called as persuasive visual patterns, which is what are the patterns in advertising that advertisers have used since hundreds of years, that
Mm-hmm.
contribute in you, that contribute in persuading you to buy a certain product. And you can find that book on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon. It's called as Persuasive Visual Patterns. And
Mm-hmm.
then I realized it's not just stuff like design patterns or visual patterns in advertising, but you can use pattern thinking in almost every single aspect of your life. It makes your life a lot easier, because
Mm-hmm.
the opposite of pattern thinking is label thinking. I mean, there is no word as such called as label thinking, but that is what I call it. What
Mm-hmm.
do I mean by label thinking? Let's say tomorrow a marketer comes and says, uh, we are going to master, or we are creating this category called as inbound marketing. Have you heard of the term
Mm-hmm.
inbound marketing? Right. Now,
Not
what
really.
is it? It is, so inbound marketing is something that HubSpot coined. So the idea was using content to attract prospects to become your customers. Getting it? It is just very simple fundamental idea of creating content to bring people in to become your customers or get people interested in buying your product. So similarly, let's say you know performance marketing as well, right? You
Yeah.
have heard of performance marketing. Yeah, so there are so many
Yeah.
labels that marketers have coined, like performance marketing, SEO, influencer marketing, content marketing, inbound marketing, email marketing. But when you just strip off all these labels and
Yeah.
try to
So
think of the
I
fundamentals.
see basically I was just thinking about inbound marketing. I know what it is, but I've never like literally used the word inbound marketing. It's, it's bringing it's basically attracting customers to your business by
Exactly.
creating content. Yeah.
Exactly. So what you did was you used pattern thinking in a way. You stripped down the labels and you just
Mm.
focused on the fundamental idea itself, which is attracting customers
Mm.
instead of chasing the customers, right?
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is not common. People are so stuck on the labels itself, and that is why marketers come up with labels all the time to make something seem as new, when in fact it is
Mm.
just the same old thing wrapped around a new term.
Mm.
Got it?
Which
So
necessarily doesn't add any sort of value.
absolutely, exactly my point.
Yeah.
Because when you
Mm.
understand at a very fundamental level, all the kinds of marketing strategies or types that I described, all of them have the same thing in common. You have to think of an idea, create some kind of a nudge or content, push it out to people, and see if they act on it. And if they don't, then optimize it. You tell me any of
Mm.
these marketing channels that don't use these 5 steps, or any of these marketing strategies that don't use these 5 steps, right? But people get too stuck on the labels because, anyways, like first of all, it is again, I think we are going back to the whole consumer and creator mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
We create labels because we want to sell it, sell a certain skill as something new, that's some
Mm-hmm.
as something that you will never find anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
we tend to buy it, and we tend to start believing in it without really investigating into the fundamentals of what it really means. And when you get into the fundamentals, you start realizing all of this is just timeless wisdom, and you don't really need to wrap new labels for the same old thing. At least when
Mm-hmm.
you are thinking as a creator. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are two lessons here. First is wrapping same old ideas with new terms actually works in the market. And second, if there
And
is
that's what
as a creator,
everybody's doing. It's like just imagine like a corporate, for example, a soap brand, and like doing
yeah,
a new packaging, calling it like new Lux or something like that, or something like that.
exactly.
Like giving it. So it's a common usage also. Finding a new wrapper basically.
But then also as a
Yeah.
creator, that's a way to apply this lesson. But there is also a trap here, because if you buy into those labels, then you
Mm.
get into this shiny object syndrome, right? You start chasing every new
Mm.
thing thinking that, uh, this is my ticket to riches. This is my ticket which
Mm-hmm.
will give me everything that ever always wanted. For example, crypto
Mm-hmm.
is just a wrapper, in a way, fundamentally, on as day trading your shares, right? The risk of
Mm.
day trading shares is the same as the risk of day trading crypto. uh,
Mm.
but people always thought no, crypto is different. And because the label
Mm.
was new, and the financial instrument was very different, so they
Mm.
chased it. That is what shiny
Mm.
object does. Like, it's good as a marketer when you are selling something, but it's very bad as a creator if you buy into it. That is what I'm
Mm.
trying to tell. That's what I have thinking
No, so
recently.
I'm thinking about it. So this happens everywhere. It's not just in marketing, like pattern that you were talking about. The thing is that I agree 100% with this thing. I don't have anything to sort of,
Yeah,
because I've never. So it's also like where you're coming from, maybe like. So I was speaking to one of my designers, like lead designers. He didn't go to like a massive university or like the best design school in the country or something, but he has a high standard of delivery and his process is completely different. He thinks outside the box, as in. And we have another designer who is from a prestigious institute. I mean, I hope they won't mind because I'm talking about this, because I've given them the feedback directly also. So this particular designer always is stuck behind the process of uh, there are some things that you can just figure out by instincts, especially
yeah,
if you worked in some industry for like 2 3 years at least. You know that you don't have to follow the process, you just get it.
yeah.
But then that comes naturally to me.
Mm,
Like a plus b, in my head c comes. That's how my brain functions.
mm,
But there are some people, I think that's also like to be blamed on the institutions who force processes. Our school system also, right?
yeah.
General education system, who what forces all these processes to come out some with something. But when scaling
Mm,
or like building a business or building this process actually helps you. I understand the system and processes thing that we were talking about before also. But then don't you think it's like sometimes like little too much when people try to bring in these processes in terms of this particular
yeah.
person cannot come up with things if this
Do you
person
know why?
is not going through this process?
Yeah. Do you know why? So you pointed out about the education system precisely, but there is a nuance there. Being taught to be the followers of process and not the creators of process.
Hmm.
Just take something as simple as uh, arranging a family function or arranging a
Hmm.
family trip. Okay,
Hmm.
this is a very common pattern across all Indian families, which is it
Hmm.
will be the it will be a mess when everybody starts getting involved in planning a trip, a family trip,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, and or a family function. The reason is, let's say,
Hmm.
wedding for that matter. Most
Hmm.
weddings are
Hmm.
chaotic, and the reason for
Hmm.
that is there is no established process there in arranging a wedding. Everybody has their own ways of
Hmm.
doing things, and because of
Every
that,
family has their own unique.
because they yeah, and because they don't have anything to follow, they are also not able to
Hmm.
create a process. Because now, okay, I have a unique wedding the way I want to have. I want to have my
Hmm.
own wedding in my own way, the way I want it.
Hmm.
But there is only desire. There isn't a lot of understanding of how do I achieve it and what are the steps in between. Because I have never
Hmm.
trained myself to think in those terms. I have always thought
Hmm.
in terms of these are the steps I need to take or follow, and I will get this result. But I have never thought
Hmm.
in the terms of this is the goal I want to reach. I don't know what is the path, and my job is to figure out the path, right? So
Hmm.
the figuring out the path has never been taught in our schools. Uh, it's just like this is how you achieve it, and that's all. This is the ultimate truth. I mean, when I was in school, I always had this kind of lack of confidence because teachers used to uh, teach everything in a way that this was the ultimate truth. And I used to
Hmm.
somewhere deep down doubt a few ideas and concepts like exams are important. And if you don't study,
Hmm.
you will never be able to do anything important in life and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Now, deep down, I did doubt it, but the level of confidence with which they used to say all of this made me doubt myself, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and then after you get out in the world and you actually take the experience of
Yeah.
the real world,
Yeah.
you realize, okay, I was right and they were wrong.
Yeah.
But As a kid, you are too vulnerable and gullible to uh, know something is true and believe in it, in spite of all the bade log
Were
believing
you
you
the
something
eldest?
opposite. No, I was the youngest.
Okay. What happens in my case is that I had to go through it at least during school. But then in
Hmm.
college I was like, okay. Also I gained self confidence. I was like I realized that I have the ability to figure out. So I was just like,
Yeah,
okay, if it's not important, if I'm not
same happened
thinking
with
it's
me.
important for me, I'm not gonna go behind it. But then what I've
Yeah.
realized is because I have that sort of mentality, my little sister, she
Hmm.
knows.
Yeah.
Like in 10th standard, ninth standard stuff, she's like, okay, exams are not the most important thing. It's a journey. It's like if you go to the right college, you have meet the right people. It's a networking thing. And that's also because I keep telling her. So yeah, I
Yeah.
understand where that is coming from. Yeah, please go ahead.
So that is again a problem. Like, all of this comes in the same family of problems, which is following a process, buying into the labels, then being very, just a minute, buying into the process and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
even by the way, I just go back to Christopher Alexander's pattern thinking and a pattern language. If you read what he has written, I got goosebumps when I read it for the first time about how to think in patterns and stuff like that. And when I talk with architects
Mhm.
today, lecture schools, none of them even know about his name or even the idea of pattern thinking. All of them know about, again, following the process. And this
So
is how
okay,
you,
just to simplify it. What are the three key takeaways that you would take from that book? Like important
yeah.
takeaways.
First takeaway for me is, if something has evolved over time, uh, and it has stayed timeless. For example, if staircase has come across different civilizations and timelines, uh, then it is something which is natural, and it is not artificial in terms of design. It's a natural design, and it is a highly functional
What do
design.
you mean by that? What
Certain designs that I feel are artificial, or they don't evolve. I don't have the right words to say it because I haven't
can
really
you give me an
articulated.
example?
Okay. I feel the glass buildings today, which are skyscrapers and all, are not very natural, and they are not very conducive to humans and even nature, but
Why do you say that?
very sustainable. They take too much of energy. You won't find, it makes you extremely disconnected from the outer world or the nature, right? Have you lived? Okay, I'll just tell you my personal experience. I have lived in like a 200-year-old house, which is made of stones and that kind of architecture, Carnatic style. It's called as Vada. Okay, I have lived in that kind of house, and I have also lived in a skyscraper. Living in this kind of house, the old-fashioned house, did not drain me of my energy and did not make me feel depressed. But living in a skyscraper did do that to me over an extended period of time,
But
because I
then
felt very
the
disconnected from the world.
problems. Okay, I mean we don't have to stress on this example that you were mentioning, but I think
Hmm.
the problems are completely different here. I mean, like it's the new urban challenge of limited space and like you cannot go vertical, so you cannot go horizontal, so you have to go
Yeah,
vertical sort of stuff.
yeah. So it's a
Yeah, I mean
solution to a certain
it's
problem,
not it's
but
not like nobody's it's not anybody's choice that's but it's end up because of growth and overpopulation
yeah,
and stuff like that. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I understand the glass building thing that you were mentioning. I think it's not going to be
so you
eternal.
don't.
It's just a phase of like 30, 40 years maybe, and something
Yeah,
else is going to
probably,
come up.
because you don't find that some. So there is something called as Lindy effect, which says that if something has stayed around for a very long time, it will stay around for longer period of time,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
which is uh, something like a staircase or something like a bungalow, right? So
But
there are many
only
names
only
of
only
different.
in terms of this effect is only in terms of design or architecture or stuff, right?
It
Or
applies
does it
everywhere.
also imply into other?
Um, let's take the visual patterns example that I created. So there is this pattern, design pattern, which I call left right layout, which is where
Mm,
you show something on the left and you show something on the right and show the comparison between them. For example, the before and after image that the gyms use,
mm,
or us
mm,
versus them, you know,
mm.
or uh, the bad thing versus the good
General
thing.
general content in terms of performance marketing. What we have, what they don't
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
You sort of
General
like, yeah.
contrast, showing
Mm,
contrast, right? Now
mm,
people have used this for a very long time in the past, and they are going to
mm,
keep using it for a very long time in the future, because it's one of the most
mm,
fundamental design patterns to show something at a glance. The show
mm,
a comparison or contrast between two ideas at a single glance. Now that's a very
mm,
simple straightforward layout, but it is
mm,
timeless because it has been used for a
mm,
very very long time. There is another pattern, let's say I call it ingredients. Basically, if you're
mm,
selling a food product or a cosmetic product
mm,
or anything, you show the raw ingredient that has been used in that product. Now this pattern
mm,
was used by advertisers since hundreds of years. If you look at the newspaper ads which were black and white until today,
mm,
and you are going to see this for whatever amount of time marketing is going to exist or selling is going to exist, you will see that
mm,
people will show the ingredients used inside a product, and that
mm.
creates a lot of subconscious impression on what to
Do
expect
you
in this
think do you
product.
think testimonials is something
Yeah.
similar?
Yes, yes. So
So
social
it's
proof is a
basically
pattern that
like,
I've,
so yeah, everything that we have been using in marketing is something that has evolved over time,
yeah,
and just the
but it has
medium
not
has
changed.
changed, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So the pattern itself has not changed. Like you will still use the quote
Mm,
of a customer giving a testimonial about your brand or a product, and people
mm,
will keep doing that for as long as marketing exists. So I have this pattern as well in the library, right?
mm.
And there are about 30 odd patterns that I could identify. It's not that those are
But
all the patterns.
how do you think like, what is that thing that can actually add value? Something that, some pattern that we might have missed, or something that you that caught your eye, that can actually add value in marketing, other than the
Okay, in
recognition of
terms of
these
the visual
patterns.
patterns, in terms of visual patterns or in terms of general patterns?
Visual or general, doesn't matter.
L- You are asking me about a specific pattern that could add value, or are you asking me about just a broad question around patterns?
No, I'm talking about like what could be a takeaway in terms of like, how. So, for example,
One,
we
there is
mentioned
one. I'm not
we
sure
mentioned about
if I would.
lot of patterns,
Yeah.
and I recognize all these as patterns. It's a new perspective for me, but it doesn't like sort of any add value to me, because
To
it's
you
not something
as a
that,
consumer, as a consumer or a
as a
creator,
marketer,
as a marketer.
as a
Okay.
creator. Yeah.
Hmm.
So like, what do you think can be like a takeaway? So for example, there was something which I knew was something, and
I'll give you a
somebody
very
helped
clear
me
idea.
give it a name. So I call
Correct.
it like, say, X. But
Yeah.
that's what has happened. So I already knew about it. But
Yes.
like, is there something else
I
that's
tell you where
like,
the
how
value
how
lies.
do we?
I'll tell
Yeah.
you where the value lies in pattern thinking. It is in having a
Mm,
common language and a common vocabulary for a team to talk about certain ideas and how to present your ideas
mm,
to the world. For I'll give you a very
mm,
clear example. Now we are selling stevia through
mm,
Magic Leaf, right? We have
mm,
identified a few brilliant patterns that always work in advertising for us. And we have named those patterns, and those patterns were the first few patterns we identified. One was show ingredients, the other was
mm,
product in action. Product in action pattern is
mm,
basically showing the product in action. For example,
mm.
when I show the spoon of stevia while you are pouring it into a cup of tea, that visual itself creates a very powerful impression about how am I supposed to use this product. We saw
Exactly. So this is
consistently.
something, just to add. So when we do food photography at FUD, so
Yeah.
I always force so like I always force myself to make sure that there is a picture of somebody engaging with the food, like
Yes.
picking the food, or like not necessarily eating the food, but like picking the food or cutting the food or something like that. So that sort of engagement,
Yeah,
which works, which really works.
exactly.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
in that, what I have written in terms of product in action is always show the moment of value, the moment where you get the value. For example, there is one example in the pattern which shows uh, there is a device connected to a phone, and there is a credit card that is getting swiped.
Mm,
Okay, now you
mm,
automatically can imagine what this product is without
mm,
any explanation. Now that's a product in action, and the moment of swiping in it is the moment where the value of the product is created.
mm,
Getting
mm,
it? In terms of stevia, pouring the spoon in the cup of tea, like that moment of pouring is where the value is getting created for the consumer.
mm,
So
mm,
that is how you use product in action. Now what is the value in this whole thing is, first, you have a common vocabulary. So I can simply tell my photographer or my team, we need a photo, a new photo in Diwali theme. Make sure you show ingredients. uh, it has product in action wala pattern, and show format. So there is another pattern called as show
what do you mean
format.
by format?
I'll tell you. A lot of people, if you just show the jar, they always have a subconscious question: is it a crystal, is it powder, what is the color of the powder, what exactly is there inside the jar? We saw, and we kind of did a lot of tests. We saw when we showed a small bowl in which we had a heap of stevia powder, it again answered another subconscious question that I have as a customer, that what's in this jar is a powder. Getting it? So that is show format.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now what we realize is, when you stack all these patterns of on top of each other, the more patterns you stack, the more powerful it gets.
Okay.
Getting
So
it?
it's
Because
show
the
ingredients, show moment of value, and show
show product
format.
and act, show ingredients, show format,
Okay.
and then show, actually, I mean, showing the jar how it looks, that is part of it, which is showing the product itself or showing the packaging
Mm,
itself. Let's
mm,
say uh, you have a hardware product that you are trying
mm,
to. I think you are also using that in the nutraceutical company that you are trying to build, right? And what I have
yeah.
named that pattern is exploded view. What is exploded view? In hardware, you see there is a product and you explode it and you show all the components inside it. That is called as exploded view. Now,
Mm,
having a vocabulary for all these patterns, what happens is you start noticing them because now you have created labels around it, right? So
yeah.
it's like a,
Yeah. Makes so next time. So for example, I'm working on a project, or like on my own nutraceutical stuff that we were talking about.
yeah.
I am aware. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it has to come up from, say, like some sort of references or some sort of the
Exactly.
process. Yeah, I understand where
But
it comes.
here's the beauty. When you do a basic research and ideation, you're looking for visual inspiration but not communication inspiration. Now what's really beautiful about visual patterns is they are patterns of visual communication, not aesthetics. There is a difference,
Mm, mm,
right? When I say left right layout,
mm,
showing ingredient, I'm communicating the ingredients. Showing format,
mm,
I'm communicating the format. Product in action,
mm,
I'm communicating the moment of value. Exploded
mm,
view, I'm communicating the components inside this, right? There is another
mm.
one, step by step is the name of the pattern, which is kato
What
goro
is step by
lagao,
step?
right? So it's
As
like,
in?
what is the steps you use, what is the steps you use to
Okay.
use the
Okay.
product.
Yeah.
In terms of cosmetics, let's say you are
Yeah.
using some product where there are two different sachets and you need to mix them and then apply it,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Yeah. Got
kato
it. Got
goro
it.
lagao kind of
How
thing.
to
So
use
that is
it
step by step.
basically.
Correct. So when I say step by step, the layout is very clear to you in your mind. It goes from left to right, and it has three different components, and there is probably an arrow, and there is one, two, three. There are
Mm,
numericals, and there are descriptions of what is the action you need to take, right? And
mm,
there is a sequence in which you need to do things. So this one pattern communicates everything that you need to know about communicating the idea visually. Okay. There is another
mm,
one, timeline. Timeline is basically showing the
mm,
timeline of something from A to B. So there is a brand called as I guess Tree something. It's a tea brand. T box or something. I don't remember the
Hmm.
exact name. Now, what is unique about them is,
T-box. T-box.
right? What's unique about the brand is
Hmm.
they say that they will bring bring the tea directly from farm to your house, and so the time
Hmm.
required between the tea reaching your house and the time it is harvested is the least, and that is why you will get the freshest leaves available, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
and then they show that in comparison with a traditional tea supply chain where you have like many chains, and then there are a few months between the tea reaches you and the time it is harvested. They use timeline as
It's
a
basically
design
like a
pattern to explain this one.
farm to table, farm to fork
Farm to table,
sort of
right?
thing, right?
But
Yeah.
they use two patterns here. One is left right, in which on one side they are showing how the traditional supply chain works and how their supply chain works. So that is left right, and within that they showed the
And they're
timeline.
using timeline in
Timeline.
between. Okay.
So they are showing the timeline
That's
of
that becomes
our
more
supply.
powerful. So
Getting
you're
it?
basically trying to say that stacking of these patterns and communication
Yes.
makes the
The more you
narrative
stack,
more stronger. Mm.
exactly. The more you stack it, the more powerful it gets. Another pattern is what's in the box. So this
Mm.
works very well with a product that comes with a lot of components that need to be assembled together. Let's say IKEA.
Mm.
IKEA makes sure
Mm.
that it always shows what's in the box while they are doing the marketing and stuff. So based
Mm.
on the kind of product, the nature of the product, what happens is, as a customer, I have a bunch of questions. If you are able to answer those questions with a visual, my cognitive load is minimum and I keep getting the answers
Mm.
quickly. Okay.
Mhm.
uh, there's another visual pattern called as trust badges. What do I mean by that?
Mm.
Let's say you're on an e-commerce site and there is the moment we generally use trust badges is around the add to cart button, because
Mm.
by the time you're convinced that I want to buy or I'm considering buying this product, the next question you get in mind is, do you charge for shipping? How much time will it take for me to get this product? Is the shipping available at my place? And do you have cash on delivery? So we have four badges which
Mm.
says ships all over India, cash on delivery available, free shipping, and whatever the question was, right?
Or
So
discount on prepaid orders or something like that.
yeah, 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 something like that. So basically, now discount on prepaid orders is again something that is not the right message during the add to cart moment. At that moment, saying cash on
Mm.
delivery is good. But when you
No,
add
it's
to cart,
basically
you're
checkout.
about to check out. You're about to check out. And where you have to decide between COD versus prepaid, that is when you can say, okay, if you do prepaid, you'll get additional 10% discount. That is when they can decide if they
Mm.
want to do prepaid or do cash on delivery,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
that is so again, the moment at which you show, that's an entirely different conversation. The moment at which you show a certain nudge makes
Mm.
a world of difference in how you convert the customers. But using
Mhm.
we use badges at that moment. So badges is another um, pattern. Trust badges. So trust badges can change. For example, uh, we can say this is FDA approved, FSI approved, uh, this certified, that certified, right? Now this is in a moment where they have just been introduced to the product, but they still doubt the
The credibility, trust
credibility,
issues, basically.
trust issues, right? But once that happens, the next level of doubt they have is, I'm a diabetic, is it safe for me? So we have trust badges which says safe for diabetics, safe for elderly people, safe for children. So
But
safe,
then
safe,
does
safe.
this trust badges, does it like weigh equal to, like in the flow, does it come at the same level as this social proof?
So I'll tell you, social proof. Proof is a very tricky pattern. You can use it in your ad, you can use it on the landing page, or you can use it during checkout. What matters is what you're communicating inside the social proof.
Mm.
Okay. If it is in an ad, then you uh, communicate the outcome, right?
Mm.
Or communicate the problem that
Mm.
the customer faced and how it was solved. If you're showing it on the checkout page, you communicate something that increases the trust, which says your customer support is amazing. Let's say there is a testimonial that says the customer support is amazing, they were always active, they were always on top of my order. That could
Mm.
be another testimonial that you
On the
put on the
landing
checkout.
page,
Yeah.
on the checkout page.
There are there is a huge percentage of people who drop out just before putting the card details, because they start getting a lot of doubts about your
Hmm.
credibility, or that it can be anything, right? If they have doubt about their own decision, if they need it or not, uh, during the checkout stage, there is a high probability they will drop out. But the rest of the people who will drop out because of trust issues, I would rather use social proof to keep them, by using a social proof that talks about a customer service and increase the trust. So
Hmm.
it's not the social proof as a pattern itself, but what you're communicating inside it that matters.
What's
But again,
inside the box, basically? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's exactly the communication there? So, but
Yeah.
that's again a different thing. If I stick to the pattern, what I'm trying to say is you need to stack as many patterns. And this is what Christopher Alexander said in architecture. He gave an example of a staircase is my favorite pattern in architecture. He gave an
Hmm.
example where he said that if you have an open area and you create the staircase in such a way where people can also sit and have conversations with each other, uh, that area, the quality without a name, or the life force in that area increases even more, because now the
Hmm.
function of that staircase is not just to go from level 1 to level 2, but it is also to sit together and socialize. So
It's like
can
what
you
happens
make
in colleges and stuff.
yes, exactly. So the idea is to make every single pattern as functional as possible, or every single piece
Hmm.
as functional as possible, where it can have
Hmm.
it can become a Swiss knife, right?
Hmm.
And when you do this for multiple brands, let's say today I'm talking about Magic Leaf, tomorrow let's say we are looking after a hardware company.
Hmm.
There are If you start doing research for all the ads, what you might look for is inspiration for ideas and inspiration for aesthetics, but very few people look for patterns. But when you start doing
Hmm.
that, like exploded view is a pattern, you will start identifying all the ways hardware products could be sold, and
Hmm.
all the questions that each pattern answers. And once you understand that, and once you stack all of them together inside a single image, you have a very powerful visual. That is how you
Hmm.
communicate visually. That is what I have discovered while doing this visual patterns wala project.
It's very interesting. So I mean, my only question was like, okay, I'm aware of all these things. I have not
Mm.
given it like the name, and how does giving the name sort of create value, which you have sort of answered, because now I know what to call each, and like I know what to pick and put it in the basket. That the
Yeah.
basket is like whole. No, I understand. That's
And
pretty good.
also, when you
Hmm.
put a name to it, you can transfer that knowledge to your client or to your team or to anybody. But
Oh,
and it's
even just
also much more
conversation.
efficient. It's also much more efficient. Like, would you like to explain the whole pattern of left right layout, or just say left right layout and they get the idea, right?
Yeah. No,
So
that's why you need to coin words. That is how
yeah,
language functions, right? Yeah.
yeah.
No, 100%. Uh, yeah. So my pattern that I wanted to talk about was like very completely different. I don't think it fits in the same basket. But what I wanted to ask you is that have you seen, so in your like life, basically, like say 25, 30 years of living, have you seen like a pattern in self reappearing again and again?
In my life,
Yeah. Like
yeah, yeah, of course.
some things are habits. I get it. But then there are like patterns, like for example, if given a certain situation, you tend to behave in a certain way rather than you're not able to add any sort of bring in any sort of new value, or you're not able to optimize it further, that sort of scenario.
Yes, I am highly, highly, highly aware of a lot of, especially negative patterns in my life. Uh,
Exactly, I'm talking about negative
yeah,
patterns.
yeah,
Positive
yeah,
patterns is good.
yeah.
Yeah, but then how do you deal with it? Like what are the stands that you take, or
See,
have you thought
until
about it?
yes, I mean I have broken a lot of patterns, but I have also not been
Yeah,
able
so
to.
can you
Not
give
been
me an
successful.
example of like not too personal negative pattern that you have like sort of, doesn't have to be like really personal
Yeah,
or something.
let me think. pattern of starting exercising with a lot of energy and then fading
Mm,
out after a few weeks.
mm,
So uh, like there is, I have a difficulty in consistently uh, giving myself time for fitness. That is
mm,
a negative pattern that I have.
mm,
There is another pattern in terms of chips, which
mm,
is somebody is not respectful to me, okay, or even if they're angry with me or for some reason and all, I entirely get turned off, and
mm-hmm.
I stop giving any damn about, you know, staying in touch with that person. One.
Second, I'm supposed to. You can pause here. My phone is ringing, but I don't know where it is.
Ah,
Yeah, but it's disturbing the whole thing. No, that is why. I don't have any issue. Okay,
hmm.
yeah, go ahead.
Again, fitness and health related disciplines, I have a difficult
No,
time
but
in
you're
staying
talking
touch
about
with.
the anger or like disrespect thing. I missed that part.
Yeah, so that one, so I usually then just cut it off. I don't really try to maintain that relationship anymore. I have to tell
Hmm.
myself, no, it's okay. You need to forgive and move on. It's okay.
No,
I have
so
to remind,
how do you solve or come across these negative patterns?
come across. I don't know how do I come across. I just notice them. How do I solve it? I just need to be extremely disgusted with my own behavior first, uh, and then it goes away. Like I kind of solve it forever, but it is not until I
No,
am
so my
disgusted.
question. So first of all, is like so I remember like there is this uh, any sort of revolution or any sort of change that happens in society in self or anything, the first step is acceptance. So you like you no first step is awareness. You become aware of about it. The second thing
Hmm.
is you basically accept it. So
I don't
how do
accept.
you
I mean, it's difficult
you
for
don't
me to
accept the
accept.
so no, when you're talking about like this patterns and negative patterns in self and everything, so
Hmm.
you sort of understand that you don't accept the pattern. You're like, okay, you accept that it's a negative pattern,
Hmm.
and then you consciously put in sort of effort into, or do you have a mechanism for
Not,
that also, or like
no, I
have
have
you
never been able to put conscious effort into breaking a negative pattern.
hmm,
Uh, I'll tell you. That's what. So one of my bad patterns was talking a lot of, like this was when I was a child, talking a lot
hmm,
without a reason. Like,
hmm. Me too.
yeah.
I
So
think that's how we ended up having this podcast.
because and talking nothing of value, okay, just
Hmm.
stupid stuff,
Just like
uh
buffoonery,
blabbering.
foolish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bus foolish
yeah.
stuff, like absolutely of zero value, and I
But
don't know
then
what.
like sometimes in between, I still do that sometimes with my friends and all. But
I
then
don't know, I can't do it anymore. Like it's just
I do it
exhausting
with
for
my
me.
friends. I do it with, yeah, it's exhausting. You're not doing it like 24/7. But
No,
it's
if it is
also that
exhausting
my
even when
friends
you
are,
do with your friends, then
yeah. No, no, no.
how
But
do
then the thing is that my friends are also on the same vibe, that is
you?
sort of reciprocated. Then it
Mm,
becomes of value because they are also not
yeah.
like, you have a minimum intellectual capacity. Maybe yesterday they came to pick me up from the airport and we were talking about something, and suddenly somebody said something and I was just adding something to it, and it just turned into a whole ass conversation. So I was like, okay, we catch all the vibes sort of stuff. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
if it's a proper circle, it works. Yeah, you go ahead.
Mm.
You're saying.
Yeah, I agree. Although for me, there are very few people I could do that with. Not a
Mm.
lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%, 100%. Like
yeah.
5, 6 people maximum.
For me, it's like two, three people.
Yeah, but like, is your wife one of them?
Yeah, of course she is.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, she is the only, like, she is one of the few people I am foolish around. I'm not really worried
Hmm.
about, uh,
Hmm.
coming out as someone who is foolish and stupid. I'm pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
So
That because like you don't have that zero judgment in that space, basically.
yeah. I mean, that's a mutual thing for us, right?
Okay.
Both of us have accepted that we are stupid. So that is uh, that is a good place to be. But
Yeah.
the way I stopped talking a lot of stupid stuff, I don't remember the
Mm.
exact moment, but I remember the feeling of being extremely angry and disgusted about my behavior, probably because people did not respond to my buffoonery, and I was not really aware of where I should,
It's a wrong pro. It's a. I think it was just a wrong product placement.
probably, but yeah,
Yeah.
but I was not aware. Like the problem was I had very bad social skills when I was a child, and I did
Mm.
not know कब कहाँ पे क्या बोलना चाहिए,
Mm.
right? That was an extremely
Mm.
bad pattern, and the day I got extremely angry on myself about this and disgusted
Mm.
about this kind of behavior,
Mm.
something clicked, something switched inside me,
Mm.
and it changed.
Mm.
But I have never been able to change something in my life by being deliberate. I have been able to develop skills by being deliberate. But if
Mm.
you ask me about habits, uh, it's not worked for me.
No, basically, so I think like this negative pattern that is occurring in anybody, let it be like a negative obsession, let it be like whatever it is. So I think you can cut your thought, right? How you can bring in new thoughts. You can also prevent like your thoughts going in a certain way.
Hmm.
And to understand anything, you just have to. So, for example, smoking. Why do you want to smoke again? So I think it's also a very wrong way of approaching life. But understanding it scientifically helps. Like, why do you want to smoke again? So
Hmm.
nicotine gives you dopamine. So you're craving for dopamine at the end of the day. That is why you're craving for nicotine. So why are you craving for artificial dopamine? So that sort of
Yeah.
breakdown. So sometimes it helps me. I'm not saying
You
that
know
you
where this
shouldn't
has
approach
helped me?
life like that. You should go by emotions. I completely believe that. But to break negative patterns like smoking or say being
Hmm.
obsessed about somebody or like that sort of behavior, right? It's it's better that you understand where it is coming from, the source.
Hmm.
Okay, this is why it is happening. So that is why I think therapy and things like that is also recommended, because you are in conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
You understand why you need that sort of thing. So I was wondering, like, there are some patterns that keeps coming back to me again and again, and something that I'm aware of, and something that, so I think the ability to identify and accept sort of like helps.
Hmm. Hmm.
Let's see.
You know, that method works for me when I need to change my mindset or I need to change the
Hmm.
frequency at which I'm operating. For example, there are two major frequencies at which I operate. One is when I am trying to do the creative work,
Hmm.
like creating content, coming up with marketing campaign ideas, and taking those decisions. And the other is when I need to take decisions on the systems that I'm building,
Hmm.
which is the more logical work, right?
What happens in the, yeah, you're talking about the execution bit, right? Basically.
Yeah, not the execution bit. I'm talking more like the kind of activity. For example, let's say we need to take decision on the. I'll give you the recent example. We want to take a decision on shifting from one logistics partner to the other, and also change the entire
Hmm.
software and stuff that we are using. Like, and the way this new system works is very different from the old system, right?
Hmm.
Now, this taking this kind of decision requires a very different way of thinking. Okay, compared to we also had to sell a product for Holi, which was a limited
Hmm.
edition product, and we had to come up with ideas for selling those products. What
Hmm.
kind of script, what kind of campaign, and stuff like that. Uh, so, giving a
Hmm.
brief on that requires a
Hmm.
different mindset. Um,
Hmm.
but I'll tell you what I generally. This is kind of the right now. I don't need a lot of efforts to switch between them, but I'll tell you when I was in my filmmaking days, okay, I used to look at business like a creative person. But then later I started realizing building a business is like building a system. So I started reading books about how to build a system. So there is one book
Mm.
called as Work the Systems by Sam Carpenter, and there is another book called as The Systems Thinking. So I started reading
Mm.
those books, and it actually was like installing a new software in my brain of looking at the
Mm.
world. And I started looking
Mm.
at everything as a system. So there was a phase where I
What
was
are the names? What are the names? Can you like
Work the Systems,
that?
Work the Systems by Sam Carpenter, and then there was The Systems Thinking. I'll tell you the Systems Thinking ka author ka Dennis
Carpenter.
Meadows. The Systems Thinking Playbook, Dennis Meadows. Now, Dennis Meadows is like the legend of systems thinking. Like, she has done the most work.
Which one do you want me to read first?
Start with Work the System because it's much easier, and it is designed in a way to kind of switch your mindset. I read that book. I started looking at there are moments of epiphany which is inside you, and all of a sudden you start seeing the world from a very different perspective. So that is what happened to me when I read that book.
Mm-hmm.
So it did work
Okay.
for me, like this method that you explained, which is to study something and then it kind of switches the way you think. uh,
Mm-hmm.
this was the case that where it worked for me. So yeah, this is also a very good way of like changing the way you look
Mm-hmm.
at the world, which automatically affects your habits, probably.
No, I get it. No, I get it.
That also
Okay.
led me to start doing a lot of documentation. So we
Mm.
started documenting all the systems and processes that we had in the company,
Mm.
like how to do every single thing. We had like steps and processes and stuff like that.
So it's basically like creating SOPs and stuff.
Yes, yes. But that book talks exactly about that. But the way it talks
Mm.
about it, uh, it does not give you the knowledge, it just the knowledge, but it kind of makes some kind of a fundamental shift. If you really read it with, you know, uh, sincerity,
Mm.
it will make that shift. It's more
Okay.
like a mindset change book rather than information book. There's another book I'll
Okay.
tell you about it. I remembered that when you're talking about smoking,
Mm.
there is a book called as Little Book. Wait, I'll just search. Little Book of Quitting Smoking. So, by
Mm-hmm.
Alan Carr.
Mm.
They say, like a lot of smokers say that and you should read the Amazon reviews of that book. People say when I read that book, by the end of it, I had quit smoking. It was not just this one guy, like not just one person, like many people and celebrities have given that kind of review, where
Mm-hmm.
they read the book and they quit smoking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'm going to buy this book just to study it.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out he used the principles of hypnosis while writing this book. I mean, I read another book that talked about this book, where it said
So what
that
do you mean principles of hypnosis?
there's no two principles. I don't know hypnosis a
No,
lot.
like so like how do you use that in like a book is the question.
I mean, at a very basic level, what he has done is he has found every single excuse that you might have to quit smoking, and he
Mm.
has
Mm.
destroyed that excuse through some kind of
Mm.
explanation. I don't know, I haven't read it. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
So
Okay, that's good. Pretty interesting. I think it's been like an hour or more, so I think
yeah,
we can conclude. So, what do you think are the takeaways? What all did we talk about? We talk about the pattern bit
yeah.
in
Learn to
architecture,
think in
in
patterns.
design. Can you
That's
just conclude it in like a minute? What we talked about?
Yeah. Get rid of labels. Start thinking in patterns. Once you identify patterns, label them and then stack them
Hmm.
together. So I think
So
these were the
that's in
takeaways.
marketing. Yeah, these were the takeaways. But in marketing, we mentioned the stuff like for example, in photography. So can you just
Mhm.
repeat that again, just to conclude it?
What did we talk about photography?
Basically, like showing ingredients
Oh
or
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
showing
yeah, yeah.
format, that
So
sort
you
of
want me
things.
to, summarize the specifics?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Because
Okay.
that's like a lot of value.
Yeah. So when you are, let's say, doing marketing, how would you use patterns? So let's say you are selling a food product. There are multiple
Mm-hmm.
visual patterns that you can use to make that visual communication much more stronger, like showing the packaging, showing the ingredients, showing the format, which is what's the texture and the feel of the product, um,
Mm-hmm.
showing the product in action, and
Mm-hmm.
showing the environment in which it is consumed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, environment is a very good pattern I haven't documented yet. I'll do that. That would be the 31st
Okay,
pattern. Yeah.
interesting. That's something we have to speak about in the future episode also.
Yeah.
And that is that. And we also spoke about the personal, uh, like how to prevent negative
Negative
patterns
patterns
from
in life.
reappearing in life.
Yeah.
So that's like being aware and being accepting and making a conscious decision about it. So I
I
think that
discovered
awareness
something
bit
very
is the most
interesting.
important thing. Sorry.
But no, no, I just discovered something very interesting recently about using emotions. But we'll talk about
Mm-hmm. In the
that
next
in
episode.
the next episode. Yeah.
And we also spoke about like a couple of books, right? The Little Book
Yeah.
of Quitting, the Pattern, and what was the
Work
other
the
one? Can you
systems.
just
Work the systems
work the
and
system?
the systems thinking playbook.
Okay. So I think those are the key takeaways. But it was a
Yeah.
very interesting conversation because I was much more of a listener because it's something that was completely out of what I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
and what I've never thought about it. As in as in when I say that I knew about things, but I've never understood it, like broken down sort of stuff. So thank you very much for that. And so that's it pretty much. Let's we can see each other again in the next episode. And thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.